All right, you want to get in the mailbag here?
Let's do it.
Let's start off with Scotty B, the Baylor King. Who do y'all think will have a sneaky good season from Baylor football on offense or defense or both? Who is off the radar?
Ooh, sneaky, huh? I'm going to just keep, pushing this train. I think Jalen Ellis is going to be a difference maker for this offense. I know he's not listed in the starting lineup, and that's fine. But I think he's going to have a big impact. I think his ability to be a pure deep threat is something that this offense needs, and I think he could be a great field stretcher on the offensive side. On defense, I think a hidden one is one that we actually heard a lot about over the Big 12 Media Days, and that's Garmin Randolph. I think he's got an opportunity to have an absolutely massive season, especially as a pass rusher. I just think they need someone like him, and they have someone like him, and now it's time for Garmin to take that step and really be a contributor for this Baylor football team.
I don't really have one on defense because I feel like I just can't really pinpoint one. Now you mentioned Garmin Randolph, and I look around like everybody's a starter from last year practically, so it's kind of like –
like
I don't know, Matt
Franklin
Jones just name a guy. I mean, there's like 10 people you could name, so Matt Jones, I don't know. But offense, I'm going to go Drake Dabney. I think that, the tight end spot's probably not going to be as fluid and as action-packed as people. Like, every time there's a coaching change and the coach brings up tight ends, like, people get this new thrill that the tight ends are going to somehow be involved, and there's going to be like a Kellen Winslow Jr. type player, rolling through here. And I know there's many better examples to use, but he just popped into my head as a dual threat type of tight end from back in the day, who's now rotting away in jail and is a disgusting person. Who's a kid from last year went to the Falcons? Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
That's not walking through the door anytime soon. But I do think Ben Sims could have a very solid year, and I think Dabney being a bit more athletic. And I don't know how many people are really going to be paying too much attention to him. I could see him not like week in and week out being effective, but I could see him coming up with some big plays here and there. So
yeah, I could definitely see that. I think it will be he and Ben Sims for majority of the season with some Kristoff and Henderson sprinkled in. But I like that pick. I think he could have a good year. And just to be clear, we did go a sneaky. So both Craig and I think Abram Smith will be good this year. He's not a sneaky one, just to throw that out there because he's kind of the low-hanging fruit, I think.
Yeah, so my sneaky pick on defense is Siaki Ika. I mean, and that's why I really don't have a defensive pick is because I don't think anybody's all that sneaky over there unless you're going, like I said, the Matt Jones or the, just random backup type players.
Someone like an Anthony Nyanwu just finds himself on the field. Yeah,
and he would be a good choice, or a Victor Obi, is another one, so you can kind of go anywhere with that. But y'all go Dabney on offense. What do y'all think of the non-conference schedule for Baylor women's soccer? Though it's not against NCAA tournament teams, but against 6 winning record teams out of first 9 games after the 2 exhibition games. I appreciate it and sick 'em.
Yeah, Minnesota, North Dakota State, Nebraska, SMU, Wisconsin, Oregon. I mean, it's a pretty daunting test for the soccer team. But I think that they can push through it and actually be competitive in a lot of those games. And I think it'll give them an opportunity to prove themselves early in the season. Obviously, the Big 12 is always pretty competitive in women's soccer. So I think this will be a nice test to get them ready for the Big 12 season.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to have a schedule lined up like that. I mean, I think, in the non-conference, the better teams that you can play, I'm all for that. And so it looks like they're going to, get themselves pretty well and seasoned up, early on, finished middle of the pack last year. And what was obviously a very strange type of year. They played like 10 games. Everybody pretty much just played about 9, 10, 11 games, if not less. So I'm sure they're all chomping at the bit to get back to it. But, it'll be interesting to see Baylor soccer. Did I have the right one there? Yeah, I think so. Thought I had women's soccer pulled up. Yeah, regardless, they got a good non-conference schedule. So I do appreciate the question there, and that should be exciting for soccer fans. Let's see here. Alpha Needle, SEC is now 6 of the 14 football teams have 80% vaccination rates among players and staff, which appears to be the level considered successful. Do you know the vaccination rate for Baylor football? I have no idea.
No clue. That'd be a Matt question for sure. If he'd even answer. I don't even know if he'd answer that.
And I don't know if he would either. We can try, but I'm not guaranteeing that. When looking back at recent recruiting classes, 2018, 23 in the class, 5 no longer with the program, 11 in the 2 deep. 2019, 24 in class, 9 no longer with program, 6 in the 2 deep. 2020, 18 in class, 1 no longer with program, 10 in the 2 deep. While maybe too early, 2019 looks like a disappointing recruiting year in hindsight. What are your views on these 3 recruiting classes, and how do you evaluate the overall effectiveness of a particular class when looking at it historically? So
yeah, I mean, I think that 2019 right now still has some guys that I'm pretty intrigued with. I mean, Jacob Zeno could be the starting quarterback. Jalen Ellis, I think, will have a little bit of a breakout year. Matt Jones, I think, is going to end up being the Mike linebacker at some point when Dylan Doyle leaves. Will Williams made the 2 deep. He's making a run. Quaylen Jones, I still think there could be something there for Quaylen. Garmin Randolph making his move up the depth chart. I think TJ Franklin and Gabe Hall will be the starting defensive linemen. I know they're not listed right now in the first string, but I think they're going to be good players as well. Tyrone Brown, one that you mentioned at the jack position, I don't think the jury's out on him yet. So I think there's a lot of talent. Jonah White is in that class. I think he's sneaky solid as well. And Elijah Ellis could be a project that really pans out later in his career. So I don't think it's good to write off any class really just based on the 2 deep. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. You'd like to see more, sure. But I think it's also what position do those guys play? Who's the talent ahead of them that they're trying to pass up on the depth chart? I think that all comes into play. Now, historically, how do I view recruiting classes as far as if they're successful or not? I think it really comes down to a matter of difference makers in my mind. How many difference makers do you have in each class? And I think that's really where you find this separation. Not how many role players did you have in the class. It's how many true difference makers. And I think the jury's still out on who are going to be the difference makers in pretty much all those classes. Obviously, Bernard, difference maker in 2017. I mean, there's guys that you can point to, but I think this year is where we really find out who in the 2018, 2019, 2020 classes, especially 18, 19, are going to be true difference makers moving forward.
yeah, was that Rule's last class 2019?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Oh, well, he had a part in 2020, if you remember, because Aranda just finished that class. So I guess 2020 still counts as Rules.
Well, I mean, looking at that class, I mean, Solomon Turner transferred, PMP transferred, Davis
Powell.
Dival transferred, Peyton Powell transferred, Logan Compton transferred, Niadre Zuzwa transferred,
Blake Bettier retired. Yusuf Terry transferred. Sam Snyder retired.
That's just a Rule leaving thing. That's a two coaches
Injuries.
putting together a recruiting class thing. That's an injuries thing in the case of Snyder, for example, and that's just you arrive and it's not a fit type of thing. Baylor just picked up Hal Presley. Well, Peyton Powell was on campus for a little while, and he decided, hey, it's not for me. I'm going to go to Utah. Not that different from Hal Presley going to Auburn for a little bit, deciding, hey, it's not for me. Hopefully Hal Presley has a little bit of a better reputation leaving than Peyton Powell did. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about it because I see the team they have now and what it's turned into, and it's allowed them some of these misses to go and get guys in the transfer portal like a Siaki Ika. So I think as long as you handle the replacement of it well enough, it's not that big of a deal as if this was pre-transfer portal days and you missed on a class like that. You'd be up a creek with no paddles. In a major way. But thankfully with the portal, you can kind of correct some of those mistakes.
Yeah, and they missed a lot, and a lot of guys retired. But I think there's talent in this class.
Oh, there is.
I think there's guys that could be very, very good and are really intriguing to me this year, especially TJ Franklin and Gabe Hall. I would not write them off quite yet. I think there could be huge ceilings for both of them.
Yeah, but to Alpha Needle's point, I mean, it could be like 1 out of every 5 recruits in this class hits out of a 24-man class.
Could be.
So, yeah, you are looking at like 4 or 5 guys out of 25, 24. So that is a little bit of an issue there. Glad call. What happened to Up-Tempo? I missed the explanation. Up-Tempo's on a break. You can, I guess, ask them for more information. I have nothing to do with any of that. So that's a Drake JD Sick'em 365 thing.
Yeah, I don't really have any information, but Gladcole did ask me if I gave any advice to JD on proposal, ring, or wedding planning. I did not, but I did send JD a text. I'm really happy for him. He got engaged over, I guess, the weekend, so happy to see that work out for him. I know he's been dating his lovely fiance for a while now.
Yeah, definitely saw that as well, and I don't know what the plans are with all that, so stay tuned or ask elsewhere that might be better served in answering. But definitely happy for JD regardless, and did see that and sent him a little tweet saying congrats, and very, very happy for him. Sam Knight, thank you, Glad Call. Sam 19, are you surprised at the almost complete lack of attrition this offseason? Do you think that says a lot about Aranda and the culture that the staff is building? And do you think that recruits are taking notice? I mean, there was some thought that they'd have to lose some guys or that they would just lose some guys, period, not even need to. But that's pretty much not been the case. I mean, everything's pretty much, for the most part, stayed as is throughout this. And what do you think? Is that saying a lot about Aranda and the culture, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it says a lot about the culture that pretty much all the team wants to stay at Baylor and continue to play for this Baylor program. I don't think recruits are going to notice that too much. I know Baylor will probably try to push that a little bit as person over player, continuing to kind of push that theme. So maybe if they introduce that into it as a part of it, but I'm just not really sure that recruits are sitting there on their computer trying to see who transfers out of Baylor. That's so hard to keep up with, to be honest. But if Baylor pushes it, who knows? Maybe some guys find that to be really interesting and find that, hey, people like being at Baylor. So I could definitely see them using that in that regard.
Thank you, Sam, for the question. And yeah, I think it's not so much a recruiting tool that you use. It's just they'll pick up on it when they arrive, and they'll pick up on that vibe, and we'll be able to see the culture and be able to tell, like, hey, this must be pretty healthy. These guys are all sticking around all 4 years and whatnot. Let's see, Stat Boy, will Hal Presley have any impact on Baylor this season? Thanks.
Well, Sam had one more question, so let's just one more. How much of a snowball effect do you think landing Brown or Patton would have on future recruiting classes? Zero. Because recruits don't really care about what you did the year before. They care about what happens on the field. So if Baylor goes out and wins 9 games this year, 8 games this year, that's going to matter a whole lot more than Baylor adding Derek Brown and Jeremy Patton. I would almost say, actually, it probably hurts their future class if they land both of them, because therefore they have a really good player at a position that maybe they're trying to recruit in 2023. So I actually don't really think it's very much of a positive for future recruiting classes. Obviously, they would help the football team, though, because they're very good players.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Stat Boy, will Hal Presley have any impact on Baylor this season?
Yeah, I mentioned him as a guy I'm definitely interested in watching throughout fall camp. I don't know that he'll take over a role. I think Javon Gibson kind of has the upper hand on him right now just because he was here for the spring. But I do think Hal will be a very good player for Baylor going forward. I mean, if the older guys, Tyquan Thornton especially, doesn't really step up and live up to the bill and have a rebound year from a year ago, then who knows? Maybe he gets an opportunity to come in and try to make an impact. But I think his year will be next year, along with Javon Gibson.
James Taylor, do we have any further details on losing out on Dare Rosenthal? Was it our call? Was it his? Was it the university's?
I mean, I think we've pretty much talked about this. I mean, I very much believe this was a Baylor/Baylor football team Dave Aranda call, specifically Dave Aranda call on whether they were going to take Dare Rosenthal or not. That's how I look at it. That's how I believe this whole situation unfolded. And I think the fact that they didn't offer after being coaches, coaching him for a year or two and Dennis Johnson recruiting him, I think that should speak volumes.
Do you think that Nikki Collins' plan for Chloe Pavlik is to focus on NIL, social media, and anything they get out of her coaching-wise is gravy, or do we think that they really will put a focus on the court? The presser was ultra-focused on content. It almost felt like they will roll with Green and Cummings for on the court and let Pavlik focus on the other stuff.
I mean, based on what I've seen, I think the primary goal is that she's an elite recruiter. I think that's going to be the primary off-the-court things, but I also think she's going to be involved with the things that they try to do on the court as well, with Green, Cummings, and, of course, Nikki Collins.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a balancing act. I don't think it's going to be like one way more than the other. I think, I mean, if more, probably more involved, yeah, on NIL and social media and all that. But I don't think you have a third assistant coach that you're not going to be using to coach some basketball too. That's just, there's only those 3 spots, so you're going to use all 3 as you can to help the team win on the court, and then she'll help you win off the court hopefully as well. But I definitely think she'll be involved in some basketball. Who finishes first in the Big 12 in men's basketball? Baylor, Texas, or Kansas, and why? As good as Chris Beard is, how does he handle the talent glut in Austin? Well, shoot, I mean, the transfer portal, they've taken like 12 players in the transfer portal, so there's no talent glut in Austin anymore. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Texas is going to be really good next year. They have a lot of talent, but they're also going to finish third in the Big 12 because Baylor and Kansas are going to be very, very good as well. I'll go with Baylor. For now, I need to read up more on kind of the transfers that Kansas added because I know they added a few, including Remy Martin. But I'm going to go with Baylor. I think James Akinjo's addition, I think Adam Flagler's emergence, getting Matthew Meyer back, Jonathan Chamwachachu, I think is going to take a big step in the right direction as well. And, of course, adding a guy like Kendall Brown, who could be a lottery pick next year. I think Baylor's going to be very, very good and very competitive, and I like how they match up with the rest of the teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'll go Kansas just for right now. And, look, I haven't deep dived into next basketball season. I know what Texas has done, but, like I said on the show yesterday, there's a difference in going the transfer route to build a championship team like Scott Drew did, where you bring in guys and they're there for like 3 years, 2 years, waiting, redshirting, doing whatever, like Davion Mitchell did, like every transfer has at Baylor pretty much. And then there's you bringing in like 6 new guys, and they're all playing right away after one offseason. And that's where I could see there being an issue there for Texas as far as just having the whole total package and the cohesiveness that we saw that allowed Baylor last year to just not be a really talented team, but to be a really good team. And so can Chris Beard like fast forward and kind of hyper, process all of that? If he can, then yeah, they'll be right in the mix. But I'll go Kansas by default just because just Baylor loses. I know they got a lot coming in and whatnot, but they lose a lot of that heart and soul from that team last year. I just don't feel comfortable putting them right back there at number 1. So by default, basically, I'll go with the team that is used to winning in Kansas. But should be a great race, and I'm sure Tech will have something to say here and there, depending on how that coaching transition goes. And
Oklahoma State,
they're getting
better.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a crazy Big 12 for sure. Shy Bear, we got a few questions left here. There was some questionable play calling and decision-making by coaches last year, including Dave Aranda. Specifically for Aranda, how do you anticipate his decision-making to change going forward on 4th down, et cetera? If at all, do you see him as more conservative or aggressive?
I think that, I think year 1 is such a learning curve, and I'm not really sure that I'm going to take a whole lot away from year 1, to be honest, about kind of his decision-making and things along those lines from a year ago, because I just think the how comfortable he is right now and how comfortable he is with his staff, with Jeff Grimes and Ron Roberts, of course, leading the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. I think this year's going to be totally different. So I do think his probably decision-making will change. I think he's probably going to have, probably other factors that influence what he decides to do. Maybe they'll actually have a kicker that is a little bit better this year as well, or more improved from a year ago. That would help as far as going forward on 4th down or kicking a field goal or punting. But I do think in general, I think he will be fairly aggressive with his coaching strategy. At least that's the vibe that I got from him a year ago.
Yeah, I think that's the direction I'll lean as well. I don't think they're going to be like crazy old, Baylor offenses and going, for it on 4th and short, backed up at their 30 or something like that. But I do think he'll be a little bit of a gambler when he needs to be. And Shai said, I'll add that it looked like he had grown as a coach over the course of the year too. I think he did, and I think he's grown a lot this offseason, for sure. Definitely was impressed with what I saw, just in the few minutes we got with him over at Media Days. Thank you, Shai. And finally, Coach DeBroker, what is the offseason schedule for Baylor football up till the first game? When do players report, first practice, et cetera?
Yeah, players reported a while ago, at least to Baylor. I believe, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was the beginning of July, right? Am I right on that?
I think so.
I think that's when it was, when all the freshmen enrolled, the rest of them who didn't really enroll.
Weekend or whatever that was.
Yeah, it was either the first weekend of June or the first weekend of July. It might have been the first weekend of June. I don't know. It was one or the other. But either way, they've been on campus for a while.
Yeah.
And they've been doing their thing, lifting weights, getting themselves ready for the season. First practice for fall starts August 6th, I believe, is the confirmed date. I think Dave Aranda said that at Big 12 Media Days, and I think that's the date I've been going with for a while, the first Thursday of August. And then, of course, the first game is Labor Day weekend against Texas State in San Marcos. And that's pretty much the offseason schedule. I mean, they're going to have practice all throughout the week. They'll have media days for us where we can go out and do interviews and hopefully get to watch a little bit of practice as well. But, yeah, I think that's kind of where the schedule is currently at.
All right, so there is all the news and notes pretty much from this week.